Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Van Leeuwen. This is Stefan Bartholomaeus and we are here at Sydney Motorsport Park to preview this weekend's opening round of the Supercars Championship, the Sydney 500. Before we get there though, we're actually here for the pre-season test. Now, it's been a bit of a weird build-up to the test. There was some emergency resurfacing done here at Sydney Motorsport Park, which meant this test was split into two parts over 2 days. There was 4 hours on the Wednesday morning using the short Druid circuit, and then there will be another 4 hours on Thursday evening using the Gardner layout that will, fingers crossed, be used for racing this weekend. Stefan, it's been a bit of a weird one. We're actually in the eye of the testing hurricane at the moment between the two test sessions. What have we or haven't we really learned out of today?
Well, yeah, an unusual scenario in general, and you always have on these test days the mix of tyres and who's doing what run plan. You've got some co-drivers here as well, but the timing was only showing the primaries. But the big one today actually was the fact that going to this Druid circuit means they're using that link road out the back, and no policing of track limits there today. And there was some pretty wild interpretations of the racing line. So I think some of those fast times were a little bit unrepresentative. So yeah, no massive takeouts, I don't think, from the top of the timesheets at least.
We did see Will Brown go fastest in the 888 Ford Mustang. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to saying that. I mean, I still think there's some benefit to being at the shiny end of the timesheet, and we spoke to Mark Dutton before, and they kind of just feel like it's a nice little reward after a massive off-season. Not just switching manufacturers, but building up a homologation team and engine program, adding a third car to their team, all that sort of stuff. And they're fast.
Yeah, it's sort of unusual to think about 888 being happy to top a practice session. But as you say, a huge workload for those guys, particularly that engine program, taking that on, the supply contract for all of the Ford teams, and there's a lot of work being done, still ongoing, on ensuring the reliability of those engines, which is something they've really focused on. So yeah, Will Brown flying out of the gates, Brock Feeney back in P15, not too concerned, I don't think, about that though.
This was our first proper read of the 5 Toyota Supras in the field. None of them really near the Hollywood end of the timesheets. None of them really near the Hollywood end of the lap counts either, really, in terms of the actual running that was done today. What's the kind of mood coming out of the Toyota camp across the board, do you think?
Yeah, well, certainly some tired faces in those garages. Again, a huge effort from those guys. First time 5 Supras have run on the track together, and obviously the first time the Toyotas have run with the full field. So yeah, they were sort of talking, both teams were talking about the fact they were doing a lot of procedure stuff, a lot of drop and goes from the pit box and limiter and all of these things, which you might say cynically that they're trying to cover up for the fact that they're not where they want to be performance-wise. But at the same time, it is actually not the circuit they're going to race on this weekend. Yeah. So if anything, this split in the testing has been a good chance for them to be able to get a bunch of things done, go and think about it overnight, and then go again tomorrow night.
You say this is not the circuit we're racing on, but there is a little bit of skepticism up and down the lane about that. Some concern that the fact that it's been so late with the resurfacing, is the track going to cure properly? Is turn 8, where they've done the resurfacing, is it going to hold up throughout a whole weekend of racing using that Gardner layout? We'll get a bit of insight into that tomorrow night with that 4 hours of testing. Obviously doing that at night means conditions will be cooler. It's very hot here, despite the clouds in the background. It's still very hot here. I did talk to Tim Edwards before. He said that, because, like I say, there's some teams saying, well, perhaps we're going to end up racing on that layout. The goal is to race on the full layout, and there's a few contingency plans around dealing with any breakup issues that they've got. Should that happen, it's not like we're at the Bathurst 1000 and it might start happening with 4 hours of racing to go or something like that. But it's still an interesting storyline to stand here and say we can't say for certain exactly which layout we'll be racing on come Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, the vibe from officialdom is certainly a little stronger than from Teamland, where it's a bit of, well, we'll have to wait and see. But as you mentioned off the top, that resurfacing done through turn 8, so the short circuit means they don't run through the entry in the middle, which, especially with these cars with a lock diff, tends to drag the tyre across the surface and potentially damage it. So yeah, not running till tomorrow night, more time to cure, but also these conditions. I mean, it's 35 degrees here today, but as you can see behind us, thunderstorm sort of looming in the background. So what's actually good for curing tarmac and not is not something that I've researched thoroughly before this weekend.
Well, apparently a bit of water is. So there is some hope that it does actually rain. There was some talk they might put sprinklers out there if it doesn't to try and help with the curing process. But again, I'm also not an expert, so we won't get too much into that. Let's take a quick look ahead to the racing this weekend. Again, we've just talked about all the things we haven't learnt from testing so far because it's only half done and everyone was straight lining the link road anyway. But who are you expecting to be quick? I mean, I'm happy to go first. I do think those Triple 8 cars look fast and are going to go fast this weekend.
Yeah, well, as you say, couldn't learn much out of today. It's a really interesting one of the storylines of those teams with massive changes, including Triple 8. They had the Hollywood story when they went from Ford to Holden back in 2010 and won first time out. You certainly would not bet against them doing that again.
No.
But then you've got the other teams like Grove Racing and Tickford Racing who have had very little change. And you look back to last year with Cam Waters dominating this event. So for those guys to come off such a smooth off-season, the expectations would be pretty high that they can get some trophies this weekend.
Well, we will see how it all plays out. Make sure you do stay tuned to speedcafe.com, not just across the weekend, starting from today, from tomorrow with all the testing. We'll have all of that covered with what's going on here. We've got live timing, all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, we'll have all the news, all of the session reports, race reports, all the reaction right across the Sydney 500 weekend. So please stay tuned.